Are we finally getting that Wolverine gameplay trailer this year, or is it just another tease from Sony? In a shocking twist, PlayStation is backing away from its massive live service push, and that changes everything. Helldivers 2 is getting a full-blown movie deal, but the game itself is crashing under server overloads. Doom 2016, still holding the S-tier crown almost a decade later, proving legends never die. But that's not all. Outer Worlds 2, does it stand a chance, or is it dead on arrival, just another Game Pass filler kind of release? And, of course, the big debate. Handheld gaming PCs. Are they the future of portable gaming, or just an overpriced gimmick when you could grab a PS5 Pro and a Portal? Strap in, because PlayStation news never sleeps, and today's lineup is stacked. So smash that like button like it owes you money, get your popcorn ready, and let's dive right in. So, First Light is about to get its own PlayStation State of Play. That's not just a slot in a highlight reel. That's Sony saying, hey, this game is big enough to stand on its own stage. Over 30 minutes of gameplay, which in this industry is almost unheard of unless we're talking Spider-Man, God of War, or The Last of Us. Right away, that tells you Sony sees this as a prestige game, not some experimental side project. Now, the pitch here is Bond's first mission as an MI6 recruit. That's bold. Instead of throwing us into the shoes of the polished tuxedo-wearing legend we all know, IO is letting us see him as a rookie. That creates room for story growth, character vulnerability, and all those learning curve gameplay mechanics. And IO Interactive knows how to sell the spy fantasy. Their Hitman trilogy proved they can make you feel like a master infiltrator, slipping past guards, improvising on the fly, turning a simple party into a chessboard of opportunities. But here's where I get skeptical. As much as I love Hitman, it's also niche. Those games were slow, methodical, and they thrived because of replay value. You could run the same mission 10 different ways, and it never got old. But Bond isn't niche. Bond is mass market. This game has to satisfy both hardcore stealth players and the folks who just want fast-paced action and explosions. Balancing those two audiences is tough. Too stealthy, and people will complain it's boring. Too action-heavy, and it just becomes another generic shooter with a tuxedo skin. PlayStation's blog teased everything from car chases to shootouts to stealth infiltration. That sounds amazing on paper, but how seamless will it actually be? Will it feel like 3 different gameplay chunks glued together? Or will Bond missions actually flow naturally? Sneaking in, getting discovered, escaping in a car, ending in a cinematic shootout. That's the difference between a game that feels immersive versus one that feels like a checklist of Bond tropes. And let's be real here. IO Interactive has never made car chase mechanics before. Their bread and butter is slow-paced espionage, not adrenaline-fueled driving sequences. So, are we about to see IO break new ground? Or will the driving parts feel clunky compared to the stealth? It's a question worth asking. There's also the state of play itself. Over 30 minutes sounds great, but sometimes when a publisher shows that much this early, it's to reassure people. Remember, IO has been quiet about this project for years. A massive deep dive could either be confidence, look at how good this is, or damage control. So here's the situation. We ran a poll, and listen, over 100,000 votes came in. Yeah, I know, that's crazy numbers. And the results? Brutal. 41% of people said flat out, no, we're not seeing Wolverine at the next state of play. 27% said they've given up hope entirely. And only 32% are still hanging on, thinking Insomniac might actually pull through. That's not confidence, that's despair. And honestly, it makes sense. We've been waiting since 2021, when all we got was a cinematic teaser. Logan at the bar, claws out, that's it. No gameplay, no update. Just years of silence while Spider-Man 2 came and went. At this point, people feel strung along. Now, here's where it gets fun to dream. Imagine if Insomniac actually dropped a surprise at this fall's state of play. Something like Wolverine, Fall 2026. Picture that lineup. You spend summer tearing through GTA 6, and then holiday season drops, and bam, Insomniac blesses us with Wolverine. That would be one of the best 1-2 punches in gaming history. But for now, yeah, I'm daydreaming. The hard truth is, Wolverine isn't Spider-Man. You can't just swap swinging for claws and call it a day. Insomniac's probably rebuilding combat, animations, the whole tone of the game from scratch. Plus, let's not forget, they were hit hard in that ransomware leak. That alone could have set development back. So delays? Totally expected. Fans right now are split into 3 camps: the hopeful, the hopeless, and the meme lords who joke Wolverine will drop around the same time Logan hits retirement. And honestly, that poll, our 100,000 vote poll, proves most people don't believe anymore. War. But here's why it matters. Sony needs Wolverine. Their 2026 lineup is shaky without it, and GTA 6 is going to dominate that year. PlayStation has to answer with a heavyweight, and nothing hits harder than a mature, violent Wolverine game that shows off what Insomniac can really do outside of Spidey.
Stop it.
So, Jeff Grubb just dropped a bomb. The rumored Greek-era God of War game, yeah, the one that's supposed to be a smaller spin-off, has been internally delayed. Not canceled, not scrapped, just pushed. Instead of 2025, now it's looking like 2026. And honestly, does that surprise anybody? This is PlayStation we're talking about. Delays are like oxygen at this point. Now, what exactly is this game? The rumor mill says it's not a massive Ragnarok-sized epic. Nope, it's supposedly a 2.5D Metroidvania-style adventure set back in Greece, with Kratos' brother Deimos as the focus. A side-scroller God of War, basically. And you know what? I kinda dig that. It's different. It's risky, but if they pull it off, it could be fire. Imagine that heavy, crunchy God of War combat in a tighter Prince of Persia, the Lost Crown-style format. Could work. But here's the catch. It's not even Santa Monica Studios' main team building this thing. Word is, they're supervising, while a smaller studio handles the heavy lifting, which makes sense. Santa Monica is busy cooking up the real next-gen God of War. The spin-off, that's just supposed to keep the brand alive in between. But with that comes the risk of, well, being mid. And the last thing PlayStation needs is another Concord situation. So why the delay? Easy answer, polish. Even if it's a smaller game, it's still God of War. Sony can't just throw out a side project that feels cheap. If the combat doesn't slap, if the art doesn't sell the mythic vibe, fans are gonna torch it online. And let's be honest, PlayStation's lineup is already kinda thin right now. They need this to land, not flop. And think about timing. 2026 also lines up suspiciously well with the Amazon God of War TV series, which is set to start filming around then. So maybe, just maybe, Sony's playing 4D chess, delaying this game so it launches closer to the show. That way, they hit us with God of War hype from all angles. Games, TV, merch, the works. But here's where I'm at. If this is real, and if it's really Deimos in a Metroidvania-style side project, it could actually be one of the freshest things Sony puts out. We've seen what happens when big franchises get weird side experiments. Sometimes it's awful, sometimes it's genius. Personally, I'd rather they take their time than rush it out and kill the vibe. So here's the thing about handheld gaming. Everyone keeps asking me, are they really that good, and why do they cost so much? Let's take a real look, because the hype and the price tags don't always tell the same story. First, what's the appeal? Pretty simple. You're carrying around a full gaming PC in your hands. Devices like the Steam Deck OLED, the ROG Ally X, and the Lenovo Legion Go are basically shrunken laptops that can actually play your Steam library, your Epic library, even emulation. And when they work right, it feels kind of magical. The Steam Deck in particular has nailed that console-like vibe. It's simple, clean, and with the OLED refresh, the screen looks fantastic, and the battery lasts way longer than the original. Now, Windows-based handhelds like the ROG Ally X and Legion Go take another route. They're more powerful, come with sharper displays, sometimes higher refresh rates, and support everything Windows does. You can boot Game Pass, Epic, Steam, GOG, whatever. But here's the trade-off. It's still Windows. And Windows wasn't built for a 7-inch touchscreen with thumbsticks. You'll be dealing with drivers, updates, and fiddly settings. For some people, that's fun. For others, it's exhausting. But let's get real for a second. These things cost a fortune. The Steam Deck OLED is the cheapest of the bunch, starting around $549 for the 512 gig model, and it goes up to $649 for the 1 terabyte version. The ROG Ally X, that one just dropped at $749. The Lenovo Legion Go, with its big detachable controllers and fancy display, sits at about $699. And don't even get me started on MSI's Claw. That one came out rough with shaky performance and still costs $749. For handhelds, that's insane money. Now think about this. For $800, you could build yourself a solid mid-range gaming PC with a Ryzen 5 processor, an RTX 4060, and a terabyte SSD. That rig would run circles around a handheld in raw performance. Or, for the same money, you could grab a PlayStation 5 Pro here at around $699 to $799, and a PS Portal for remote play. Play. That combo gives you a proper living room machine with serious horsepower and a portable streaming option for the couch or bed. And that's the real debate: portability versus power. Handhelds are perfect for indies, older games, or anything you want to play casually on the couch or while traveling. They shine at those use cases. But if you're buying one because you think it'll replace your gaming PC or your console for big AAA games like Cyberpunk, Elden Ring, or the next GTA, you're going to be disappointed. You'll constantly be tweaking graphics settings, lowering resolutions, and worrying about battery life. Even with bigger batteries like the Ally X's 80-watt-hour pack, you'll still only squeeze 2 to 3 hours out of the latest demanding games. Now here's where things get interesting, because if you're someone who mainly just plays at home, honestly, the PlayStation Portal is the smarter buy. I've tried it myself, and man, remote play on this thing is freaking awesome. The input delay, way reduced compared to older setups. The battery life feels like it lasts forever. And the best part, it just works. No fiddling with drivers, no updates in the middle of a session. You just pick it up, connect, and you're in your game. And Sony has actually improved it. The Portal can now play a ton of games without even needing your main PS5 on. And for the ones that do require your console running, it still works shockingly well, even if you're out of town. Picture this. You're in a hotel room, your PS5 is at home, your Wi-Fi's solid, and boom, you're playing your library like you never left. That's the kind of seamless experience handheld gaming PCs wish they had. And here's the crazy part. Remote play is even better than people give it credit for. I tested it on my phone, just using the PlayStation app, and after about 3 hours of gaming, I only lost like 5% battery life. That's insane. Think about that for a second. 3 hours of actual gameplay, barely any drain. Compare that to a handheld gaming PC where 3 hours usually means you're already reaching for the charger. That's the difference right there. Remote play is lean, it's efficient, and it's not trying to melt your hands with heat just to keep up with modern games. So where does that leave us? If you travel a lot and need your PC games on the road, handheld PCs do make sense. They're powerful enough to run most of your library and give you true flexibility. But if you mostly play at home or you already own a PlayStation, then the PS5 Pro plus a Portal is just the better deal. You'll get more power for less hassle, and remote play is so good now that it honestly feels like magic. So y'all already know I played the hell out of KF3. At first, I actually enjoyed it. The shooting felt nice, the soundtrack slapped, and I thought, okay, this could be something. But after a couple of days, man, the repetitiveness hit me hard, and I started getting bored real quick. If you've seen my review of the game, and I know most of you haven't, the views on that video are tragic. But hey, that's beside the point. You'll know I said KF3 gave me strong Doom 2016 vibes, especially because of that soundtrack. And that's what kept me going for a while. I kept jumping back in here and there over 2 weeks just because I had that itch, you know, that urge to blast monsters away. But eventually, I hit that wall. I was so burned out from the same arenas, the same recycled objectives, and the boss fights. They're a drag, honestly, but the itch was still there. So yesterday, I just said, fuck it. I downloaded Doom 2016, booted it up, and I'm not gonna lie, I played the damn thing all day, and that itch finally scratched properly. And it got me thinking, these live service games, man, they've got no soul. Don't get me wrong, the action can be fun, and there's potential in the idea. But when you're charging 40 or 60 bucks for like 9 maps, and layering on grindy-ass progression systems that barely feel like they change anything, it feels like a scam. Look, I had fun with KF3 for about 8 hours, but the last 2, absolute waste. And when you compare it to Doom 2016, a 10-year-old game at this point, it's crazy. Doom feels more polished. Every upgrade on your weapons feels impactful. Every new weapon is exciting. And even the character upgrades carry real weight. KF3, you probably need 50 hours of repetitive grind to feel the same kind of impact Doom gives you in 5. And I'm talking Doom 2016 here. Not Eternal, not Dark Ages. Those go even further. That's why so many of these live service games flop. They're just shadows of what came before. Bootleg versions of greatness. The best live service games ever, they started out as mods for games people already love. They had passion, not a price tag slapped on a dopamine machine. Now it's like, hey, remember that thing you liked years ago? Here's a watered down version for 50 bucks. Sorry, but 5 hours of entertainment before burning out, especially in a game that's supposed to be fun with your friends, is not worth 50 bucks. Hell, it's not even worth 20. So Capcom's president, Haruhiro Tsujimoto, comes out swinging at Sony, saying the PS5 is way too too expensive. And you know what? He's not lying. The PS5 has gone up in price when it should be going down. In Japan, you're paying around 80,000 yen. Over in the US, Sony just hiked the PS5 by $50, and the PS5 Pro, that's now sitting at about $750. Midway through the generation, that's insane. Consoles are supposed to get cheaper, not more expensive. So yeah, Tsujimoto pointing out that barrier is fair. A higher cost of entry absolutely makes it harder for new players to join in. But here's where the whole thing turns into hypocrisy. Because while Capcom's president is out here throwing shade at Sony for console prices, Monster Hunter Wilds, Capcom's own flagship game, is still a broken mess on both consoles and PC. Let's not forget, this game had one of the biggest launches in history. Over 10 million copies sold in its first month, record-breaking numbers, and at its peak, more than 1 million players on Steam. But fast forward a few months, and sales completely nosedive. By the summer quarter, Wilds sold fewer than 500,000 new copies, getting beaten by Monster Hunter Rise from 2021 and even Devil May Cry 5. That's not because people suddenly forgot about Monster Hunter, it's because the game looks and runs horrendously. Go check Steam right now. The reviews are sitting at overwhelmingly negative. Thousands of players are complaining about crashes, stuttering, CPUs melting, GPUs choking, and patches that either make things worse or barely move the needle. Some people literally can't even boot the game anymore after hundreds of hours. Others are joking that you need a NASA computer just to get it stable. And this isn't just a PC thing. On consoles, the pacing is rough, textures are muddy, and the overall experience feels half-baked. So when Tsujimoto says, well, the PS5 is just too expensive, it comes off like he's dodging the real issue. Because yeah, Sony's price hikes suck, no one's denying that. But if Monster Hunter Wilds was running silky smooth, packed with stable performance, and loaded with content, people would be a lot more forgiving. Instead, players who dropped full price on day one feel like they got burned. So the way I see it, Capcom's president should maybe stop pointing fingers at Sony's hardware pricing and instead look in the mirror. Fix your damn game. Because at the end of the day, players don't care about excuses, tariffs, or PS5 inflation. They care about whether the game they paid $60 or $70 for actually works. And right now, Monster Hunter Wilds doesn't. So, Sony finally called in an orbital strike and announced that a Helldivers 2 movie is officially in development. PlayStation Productions is teaming up with Sony Pictures and Screen Gems to make it happen. No release date, no cast, no director yet. It's basically like a classified mission briefing with just the headline on top. All we know is the operation is greenlit. Now, Arrowhead, the studio behind the game, made it clear they don't have final command on this. Johan Pielstedt even said straight up, "We're not Hollywood people." Translation, they might advise, maybe offer some recon, but the actual movie is in Sony's hands. And we all know what happens when command doesn't listen to boots on the ground. Sometimes missions succeed. Sometimes it's a Concord situation. The tone? That's the million-credit question. Fans are already chanting, "Make it Starship Troopers," because the satire is the backbone of Helldivers. If they strip that away, you don't have Helldivers, you've just got another Space Marine versus Bugs flick. And nobody needs more of that. The community is basically on comms saying, "Don't screw this up, Sony." Meanwhile, the game itself is evolving like a Terminid mutation. The Xbox launch in late August brought in a whole new swarm of players, plus that Halo crossover with the ODST Warbond had people geeking out. And just this week, Arrowhead dropped the Into the Unjust update. New hive worlds, random cave systems, a giant bug called the Dragon Roach flying overhead, and more ways to get blown to bits in style. Every patch feels like another stratagem unlocked, expanding the arsenal and reminding everyone why this game clicked in the first place. Community feedback on the movie announcement, it's a mix of cheers and skepticism. Some are hyped, imagining propaganda-style trailers ripped straight from Super Earth Command. Others are bracing for a botched op, worried it'll turn into a generic sci-fi with the Helldivers logo slapped on. Honestly, the vibe is like when you call down a hell pod. It could land perfectly, or it could crush your squad mate. High risk, high reward. Man, I gotta be honest with you. Helldivers 2 is basically unplayable right now, and I'm pissed. I'm not saying that lightly either. In the last 48 hours, my squad and I have crashed like 15 times. 15! That's not just a little bug here and there. That's full-on mission failure before you even get to extract. Picture this. You drop into a hive world, adrenaline's pumping. The new Into the Unjust update has all these wild caves and fresh enemies. You're finally hyped to check it all out. And then, boom, crash to desktop. Teammates disconnected at the worst possible moment. It's like calling in a hell hell pod, and instead of gear, it just crushes your whole squad. That's how it feels. And the crazy part? I want to play this update so bad. They gave us new mission types. They gave us the Dragon Roach. They gave us all this content to sink our teeth into. But what's the point if you can't even stay online for more than 10 minutes at a time? It's like Super Earth finally sent us the best weapons in the arsenal, but forgot to ship any ammo. Arrowhead, I love what you're doing with this game, but these servers, they're killing the vibe. I get that the Xbox launch brought in a flood of new recruits, and the ODST crossover lit the community on fire, but you've got to be ready for that. Right now, it feels like we're fighting two enemies: the bugs and bots in the game, and the servers themselves. And honestly, the servers are winning. I hate saying this, but I'm forced to take a break until this mess is sorted. And that sucks, because I don't want to take a break. I want to drop in. I want to liberate planets. I want to see all the new content. Instead, I'm sitting here, grounded, watching the fight from orbit. And trust me, no Helldiver wants to be stuck in orbit when there's a war going on. Arrowhead, please fix this, because right now, the only thing getting exterminated is my patience. Let's talk about the Outer Worlds too, and I'll be real with you. Fans just aren't hyped the way Obsidian probably hoped. Why? Because the game doesn't really look all that impressive. Sure, it's running on Unreal Engine 5, but when you actually sit down and watch the gameplay, it feels like more of the same. Cleaner lighting, sharper materials, better cinematics. Yeah, I see it. But it still has that cartoonish Saturday morning look that doesn't scream next gen. It screams Outer Worlds again. And here's where things get messy. Remember the $79.99 drama? They actually tried to launch this thing at $80. Fans flipped, and eventually they walked it back to $69.99. But the damage was done. People were already side-eyeing Obsidian for pulling the $99 premium edition stunt, which locks early access and DLC behind a paywall. And let's not forget, this game is dropping day one on Game Pass, so a huge chunk of players are just gonna wait and play it there, which completely kills pre-order hype. Why drop cash when you can just check it out for free? Performance doesn't exactly inspire confidence either. Previews mentioned frame drops and even little freezes on Series X. For a stylized shooter RPG, that shouldn't be happening, especially when the PC requirements demand 16 gigs of RAM and 110 gigs of space. Like, really? It looks like a juiced-up Xbox One game, but it eats storage like Cyberpunk. That mismatch makes people roll their eyes. Now, to be fair, it's not all bad news. The combat does feel tighter. Gunplay's been tuned, melee hits harder, and the stealth hacking stuff is more reactive. The writing, still funny, still satirical, and now with even more ways to reroute missions. If you like the first game, this looks like a straight upgrade in that department. But if you thought Outer Worlds was a 7.5 out of 10 but with potential, this probably nudges it to an 8 out of 10. It's not groundbreaking. And here's the bigger problem. Look around. We've got Starfield, Black Myth, Kingdom Come 2, games that are at least trying to flex big visuals or ambitious scope. Outer Worlds 2 just looks small by comparison. More polished, sure, but small, which is why the buzz feels muted. The trailers keep promising bigger, bolder, better, but what we're seeing is more of the same, a bit nicer. So where does that leave us? Honestly, in Game Pass territory, people will try it because it's included, not because the hype is off the charts. And if the writing hooks them, maybe they'll stick around. If not, they'll bounce and move on to the next big, shiny thing. So here's the thing about Avowed. On paper, it should have been Obsidian's big fantasy RPG moment. The trailers made people think Skyrim, but with Obsidian writing. That's a hype cocktail if I've ever seen one. But when the game finally dropped, it didn't explode the way people expected. Now, let's get one thing straight. It didn't review poorly. We're talking solid scores, an 80-ish Metacritic, critics praising the world building, the lore, the writing. But the conversation online, way different. Steam numbers told the story people wanted to run with. A 19,000 concurrent player peak on launch week, then a nosedive. By midsummer, it was struggling to crack 1,000. And you know how the internet works. Someone screenshots that graph, slaps flop on it, and boom, the narrative is set. But here's the kicker. It wasn't actually invisible. On Game Pass, Avowed was one of the top 3 most played Xbox games right out of the gate, with estimates saying around 6 million players tried it in the first month. That's not flop territory, that's reach. The problem is Game Pass success doesn't show up on Steam charts, so the flop label sticks louder than the real numbers. Where the stumble really happened was expectations. People thought they were getting this massive Elder Scrolls killer. What Obsidian actually made was something more focused, like the Outer Worlds with swords and magic, zone-based hubs. not a sprawling open map. And when players walked in expecting Skyrim 2 and got a tighter, smaller RPG, they felt shortchanged. That mismatch hurts more than bugs sometimes. And speaking of gameplay, combat didn't exactly light fires. Repetition set in quick. Enemies started feeling like damage sponges. Mid-game progression leaned heavy on grinding for resources, which made it feel like chores instead of adventures. That kills word of mouth. Add in some PC performance hiccups, stuttering here, weird optimization there, and suddenly even people who like the game started pointing out the rough edges. The release window didn't help either. February through March was stacked. Monster Hunter Wilds, Civ 7, Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, Assassin's Creed Shadows. Avowed got buried under giants. And when you combine all that with its colorful art style that threw people off, some wanted gritty, not stylized, you get a perfect storm of "this isn't what I ordered." So yeah, it's official, Stalker 2 is finally making its way to PlayStation. The release date is November 20th, 2025, and that's locked in by GSC Game World themselves. Pre-orders are already live on the PlayStation Store. That's huge because for the longest time, this series felt like an Xbox and PC deal, but now PlayStation players get to jump into the zone too. Now, here's the cool part. They're not just porting it over, they're going all in on the PlayStation features. DualSense support is front and center. You've got haptic feedback that reacts to the environment. Adaptive triggers that change tension depending on your weapon. Gyro aiming, light bar integration, touchpad gestures, and even audio coming through the controller speaker. Imagine hearing those eerie radio crackles or stalker whispers directly in your hands. That's next level immersion. And yeah, Tempest 3D audio is built in too, so throw on a headset and you'll hear everything creeping around you in the zone. But what about the Pro? GSC confirmed the PS5 Pro version is going to pack extra visual upgrades. Think better global illumination, more realistic shadows, improved reflections, denser volumetric fog, and thicker cloud rendering. Basically, the Pro version is going to lean hard into atmosphere. If you want the sharpest and moodiest version of the game on console, Pro's where it's at. Performance-wise, the studio's been pretty open. They're aiming for a smooth 60 frames per second performance mode, especially on Pro, and a 4K quality mode if you want to trade some frames for visuals. On the base, PS5, expect something like 2K 60 or 4K 30, but by launch, they're hoping to squeeze every bit out of Unreal Engine 5. And speaking of that engine, the game is getting an upgrade to UE 5.5.4 before launch. That's a big deal, because it should mean better optimization and less stuttering, something players have been worried about since the PC previews. And if you're into bonuses, PlayStation's even getting a few pre-order goodies like cosmetic packs and ambience upgrades. Nothing game-breaking, just a little extra flavor for fans. So here's the bottom line. On PS5, you're already getting the full package with haptics, 3D audio, and smooth performance. On PS5 Pro, you're stacking better shadows, lighting, and fog right on top. Honestly, it feels like GSC really wants this to be a flagship showcase for PlayStation, not just another port. Me, personally, I'm booting up Pro day one, performance mode first for that buttery 60, then switching over to quality just to soak in the atmosphere. So, Sony once promised us 10 live service games, right? 10. That was the magic number they thought would unlock this new future of recurring revenue streams. But then Concord happened. That game came out, crashed, burned, and then got shuttered. And that forced Sony to rethink everything. Now, in a rare interview with the Financial Times, Herman Hulst actually opened up about what's changed. And this is where it gets interesting. He said, "The number of live service games is not so important. What is important to me is having a diverse set of player experiences and a set of communities. We have since put in place much more rigorous and more frequent testing in very many different ways. The advantage of every failure is that people now understand how necessary that oversight is. That's a big shift. They're no longer talking about quantity. They're talking about quality. They're group testing more, forcing teams to share what they've learned, and even creating tighter connections between executives and developers. The whole idea is fail fast, fail cheap." Hulst even said it straight. "I don't want teams to always play it safe, but I would like for us, when we fail, to fail early and cheaply." And that explains all those cancellations we've been hearing about. Projects at Bluepoint, Bend, Firesprite, gone. Instead of dragging things out, Sony's pulling the plug earlier than before. But here's the twist. Sony isn't just thinking about games anymore. Hulst made it clear. "We take a very intentional approach to IP creation, understanding how a new concept can turn into an iconic franchise for PlayStation that can then again become a franchise for people beyond gaming. So yeah, every new game idea, it's not just about being fun, it's about whether it can be spun into anime, movies, comics, or whatever else. And that's the double-edged sword here. On one hand, Sony wants to avoid another Concord. On the other hand, some of that quirky PlayStation magic, remember Vib Ribbon, Pain, has been left behind. Indies are filling that gap now, while Sony's first party seems laser-focused on building juggernauts like God of War, Horizon, and even Ficent, all with cross-media potential. The reality, live service isn't going away. It's still the backbone of PlayStation's money machine, with microtransactions driving profits. The only difference is they put in a bunch of safety nets to make sure the next Concord disaster doesn't happen again.